I was a little surprised by your comment about not feeling supported, but I guess not too much, because Kristen and I had an offline version of the conversation. But I really sort of struggle with that. It seems to me that you framed that in a rather peculiar, and I will sort of use a little bit of pejorative term, self-serving way. That there is a legitimate question about whether the activities of the university sort of cross the line into what should be taxable. That was at the heart of that litigation. And I know it's the university's position that that is not the case, but that you chose to settle that lawsuit with a fairly large sum of money and spent an awful lot defending it. So I think that it was not a slam dunk that it was going to go the university's way of getting carried through. And I really...
I don't think there's any doubt we would have won at the end of the day, but we would have won at the end of the day after spending a lot of money on lawyers, Patrick, and as I've said before, the way I want to spend money despite my own profession is not on that, right? There are a set of issues that were there. Some of the issues were about specific properties, and one could go back and forth about specific properties, but there were also questions about whether or not Princeton University is a nonprofit research university under New Jersey law, right? And you were co-defendants with us. It would have been entirely possible for your attorney to be participating with us and supporting us on that particular proposition. At least my understanding is, and at some point here, I'd defer to my counsel, who's more expert and adept at these matters. But I would have appreciated an affirmative statement on that from the town. It seems to me a pretty straightforward one.
Well, if the question is whether the university is a university,
a nonprofit research university, nonprofit, and that our research mission and the sorts of things that your colleague here was just asking me to do on behalf of the town, presumably consistently with my fiduciary duties. That's what I'd like the statement to be.
Oh, but that's not the entire question in the lawsuit. The entire question is whether the sum total of the university's activities would force the university into being considered taxable under New Jersey law.
And there's no doubt. We are a non-profit.
Well, difference of opinion.
Well, and that's where, Patrick, is where, when I'm asking Bernie for support on this, and I'm looking at fundamentally what it is I do and what I get up every morning to do on a campus where I will tell you, and again, looking at our research scientists out there, where the activity of supporting the research that's going to make a difference in people's lives, from everything from medical procedures to the information technology that we depend on, requires the constant activity on my part of raising money for things that cost far more than one can support without donations. And if to say, you look at that, you find that hard, and then to say you don't know why I think you're not supporting, I think the issue is pretty clear, and you shouldn't be surprised.
All right. Well, I think we can move on from that, and I'll ask a question related.
But because I really think there are possibilities for this town and this university to come together around things that matter. As I said, we've grown up together. We've grown up together in a community. We're part of what we care about, our ideas, about the power of research and ideas to make a difference, and education to make a difference, and moving on from some of these things and focusing on the future that way. There's a lot that we can get done together. But, we can also litigate.
The question I have is pertaining to the settlement. It's very clear that there's a sizable set of funds set aside for assistance to around 5 to 10% of the property owners in Princeton. And my question is basically for the remaining property owners, actually taxpayers in Princeton. Should they read that settlement as in any way eroding the university's commitment to them under the existing agreement?
No.
Okay, the reason I asked that question, there's some things that you chose not to publish on your website that are in the agreement that are basically strings attached to the commitments that are published on the website. And it looks like there's the potential that, for example, the university might opt under certain circumstances to take taxable properties off of the tax rolls under the term of the current agreement, or might opt to reduce the voluntary payment to the municipality going forward. Neither of which were discussed with this council as the negotiating body that we had the agreement with Princeton University. And so that's sort of the source of my that is the source of my question, is whether there's well, I guess you'd answer it today. Whether the remaining residents should in any way view that as eroding the university's commitment to the town.
Doesn't erode the university's commitment to the town at all, Patrick. And we have an agreement with you. It's a voluntary agreement, right? We do a couple of things voluntarily. We make a voluntary payment that is the result of an agreement that was negotiated a couple of years ago. We voluntarily leave properties on the tax rolls. I think we believe the total amount paid in taxes from the voluntarily left on properties is around $5.2 million, and the overall it's around $9.2 million that the university pays in taxes, making us the largest taxpayer even before you get to the voluntary payment that we make. The voluntary payment isn't affected in any way by the set of strings, although there's an extension, at least a tender of the voluntary payment that is to the town that goes beyond the current agreement with the town. The town isn't obliged, obviously, to take the voluntary payment if we tender it to the town, but I don't see how that could be regarded as damaging the town's interests. I would say, Patrick, with regard to the properties that are voluntarily on the tax rolls right now, we don't want to be in a position where we're removing any of those properties from the tax rolls. We also don't want to be in a position where we're in adversarial litigation with the town and its members, or with this council in some way. And this is part of the reason why I say I would like to see us focusing on ways that we can move forward together. But I'm not going to say that, regardless of what happens and regardless of how adversarially we are treated, that we will continue voluntarily to do all of the things that we are voluntarily doing, right? There's nothing in this agreement that pulls back from that. There are certainly circumstances that could lead us to pull back from that. But I don't want to go there, and I hope you don't want to go there.
I don't, but to communicate why there's a sort of reasonable stress level on my part is that the agreement doesn't just mention the activities of the university or the plaintiffs or the municipality. It also reduces those commitments on the action of third parties, including third parties in other counties. And that seems like a kind of a big technicality, because it's one thing to say that the parties to a contract or the parties to an agreement agree to action. It's another thing to say the parties to a contract, the parties to agreement agree to actions of other parties over which they have no control. And that, frankly, looks like an escape clause in there that is the source of my worry, along with the fact that we simply weren't consulted in the discussions related to commitments that are...
Well, the last one we've been around, right? Because it seems to me the town decided in ways where I would have preferred to have had the town support to pull back from participation when it could have been more involved in ways that I would have been entirely appropriate, where it was a co-defendant in this particular proceeding. But as far as what the settlement says, it's obviously a settlement between the two parties, right? That's all it can be. It's not a settlement that in any way binds the town, and it doesn't change any agreements that existed, and couldn't change any agreements that existed. What I would say, Patrick, is I don't want to be in a set of circumstances, and I would hope that the town and the community don't want to be in a set of circumstances where we have litigation going on that consumes resources that could otherwise be put to the productive collaboration between the town and the university. I don't think that should happen. I hope it will not happen, but it's a risk that happens, and that is what the agreement protects. And what we were able to do there, which I think the town should actually be pleased about, right? There's nothing that's pulled back. There's an extension which is tendered to the town, because you can't be obliged to accept a voluntary payment, right? We've said we'll offer the voluntary payment in 2 additional Years. And then, as I said, we've done something which, at least in past conversations with this council, taking it at its word, this council believed that it was desirable to do things to ensure that Princeton remained an affordable place to live for people from various income groups. Because there are a lot of parts of this town that aren't affordable in that way. And so as a result of this agreement, we were able to say, look, we can provide a payment structure here that avoids sending all that money to attorneys and sends it instead to families who would be eligible or are eligible for the homestead tax rebate. It makes things more affordable to them. I would have thought that was a good thing from the perspective of the town.
That is, and that was actually the first thing.
That's
I
great.
What I appreciate, though, is also that you said unequivocally that the rest of the taxpayers are not negatively impacted by that agreement.
That's correct. Not by that agreement. And, you know, no.
All right, so on a more positive of personal interest to both of us, we are both physics undergrads.
I thought you were going to go to the Chicago Cubs. Solace I really find this week, but yes, physics undergrad.
So you might take heart in realizing that it's entirely conceivable that within a few decades, the most important event of yesterday will not have been the election of Donald Trump, but will have been the posting of a paper called Emergent Gravity in the Dark Universe, archive.org. And I'm sure the physicists in Princeton University already know about this paper, at least the ones in string theory and gravity. And there's but I think you'd be interested at, probably not in the details of the paper. You're, like me, you probably have long since lost the ability to get to that level. But
we're in complete accord.
But there is an interesting article on phys.org called New Theory of Gravity Might Explain Dark Matter, which explains the import of this. And essentially what it says is there have been a couple of puzzles in physics, dark energy and dark matter. And the author took string theory, incorporated dark energy, and got gravity and dark matter explained as a result of it, and basically improved Einstein's theory of the process. So that may be the most historically important event of yesterday, once all the dust settles from our trials and tribulations in the next 4 years.
I hope so.
Thank you for elevating our discussion. All right, I just want to be respectful.